Okay, so we're going to be talking a fair bit about the state of play that was released this week. A few key tech games that we want to talk about here, including our first look at Marvel's Wolverine, shown running what I think is the quality 30 FPS mode on a PlayStation 5 Professional. It's highlighted as a gameplay trailer. However, the disclaimer talks about gameplay and cinematics. Which brought about a curious resurgence of angry Alex. Alex, let's talk about your anger, which is quite apt, bearing in mind the mature rated Wolverine
This is true.
we're going to be discussing.
Similar level of anger here. No, not really. This is just a nitpick for all the AAA publishers out there. I feel like the phrase gameplay has been, as a description for a trailer, has been kind of drawn out in its meaning. Because this is definitely, I wouldn't doubt at all that Insomniac would put out something that isn't real time or anything like that. But it's more like if you have like a QTE segment where the camera like moves without player control and the player is hitting like one button or no buttons, or if you show a bunch of cinematic stuff that is definitely not player controlled, and you have like 10% of a trailer or something like that that actually has uninterrupted camera movement that's brought about by the player, then I almost feel like you're really stretching the definition of the word gameplay to describe the trailer in the first place. Other trailers we'll be talking about later on from this show or elsewhere do seem more like what I would consider a traditional gameplay trailer. But AAA people, like, come on, like just describe it as like debut trailer or something like that. You know, do something, right. Say something different. Don't call it gameplay.
But they've done a debut trailer already.
Then do a double debut trailer.
Another one.
I don't know. I don't know what it was, but like, my goodness, just call it something different, man.
Okay, fair enough. Do you actually have any comments about the content?
I think Oliver's got a lot to say here, but you know, okay. I think this looks like a visual continuation of stuff we've seen in Spider-Man 2 to a great degree. I don't know, Oliver, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this looked pretty great, although there are a lot of notes of continuity, I would say, with prior Insomniac titles. Wolverine himself is a very nicely realized character. Like when you look at those close-up facial shots, he has a very kind of fleshy look, and I like the skin shaders. He looks very real. Whereas in like Spider-Man 2, if you go back to that, some of the characters had kind of a waxy look, like Kraven, who's probably the closest analog here, had a kind of monotone, waxy look, did not look as good here. I think the action looks awesome. I do love that Insomniac, for I think like the first time in a very long time, is tackling a true M-rated game, so you get all that blood and guts and even like bits of bone showing up. It's a stylized kind of action game. It's not like super gritty or realistic or nasty, but it is a very visceral one. In terms of the tech, there are some nice things here. Like I'm a big fan of the environmental interactions, like the tearing apart of fruit stands. That really reminds me of that sequence in Uncharted 4 with the Jeep. Right before you get into that sequence, there's like that shootout with all the crazy fruit stands and things exploding. I thought that was quite reminiscent to that sequence. It looked quite a bit like it. But yeah, there's one shot in this trailer where there's like a big vehicle moving. There's a puddle underneath it, and Wolverine is blocking. He's kind of covering the reflected area. And the reflection still looks perfectly stable. So I think that suggests that there are RT reflections. Now, that's no great surprise, given that all of Insomniac's games on PS5 have featured RT reflections, and this is the PS5 Pro operating at 30 FPS, probably in some kind of quality mode. That's no great surprise that they would be retained, but I think that is probably the case here. For other tech, it's a little bit harder to say, and part of the problem here is, like Alex complained, this is mostly cutscene footage, and when there is gameplay footage, it's using like a very directed camera, so you don't really get a sense of the graphical technology as much, and it's very fragmentary, and it's kind of hard to say like if they're using any other, ray tracing technologies potentially. I don't think so, but if that was apparent, it would not be apparent in this footage necessarily. I do think this looks a fair bit better than Spider-Man 2, but I think it's a different focus. It's a little bit hard to say at the moment, but it's a different focus. Like it's a single-player action game. It's not an open-world game, and Spider-Man had that additional baggage of basically being based in an open world from a PS4 game, from a couple of PS4 games. I think this is a bit of a different situation. But I think in terms of like producing, a great-looking action game with great set-piece moments, great performance, great animation, stunning cutscenes, Insomniac is like the best in the business, basically. They do terrific work. And I think this will be great. I would hope Despite this showing, I would hope that it would be a 60 FPS game on PS5 and PS5 Pro consoles. I don't see why it wouldn't be necessarily, because Insomniac tends to have quite good performance across their games. And I'd hope that on PS5 Pro in particular, as one kind of wish list point, if it could have like next-gen PSSR, that would be cool. And getting like really high quality image quality in the performance mode. Obviously, Spider-Man 2 and their other games use PSSR, but that next-gen PSSR, and maybe with some enhanced ray tracing as well for PS5 Pro users, that would be really nice. But I think this is shaping up to be good. I've probably stretched this as far as it can go, given the very limited and fragmentary nature of this footage. But I thought it was quite handsome. I don't know what you think, Alex, but I thought it was quite handsome. If a little bit not the best footage for evaluation necessarily.
Yeah, it wasn't very beneficial footage to us. Still, there's some things you could say. We are presuming that it is the quality mode on PS5 Pro because the footage was presented at 30 FPS. But another owing factor to that is that the footage on YouTube was also presented at 30 FPS, which is, obviously the game. I don't imagine the game was recorded at 30 FPS, but I imagine that it was broken down at some point when it was edited to be a 30 FPS trailer. Through that, you could see still some stuff that surprised me a bit. The game was actually using film grain. You could see that through YouTube. I thought that was kind of interesting. Usually you don't see that through YouTube. You could also see that the internal resolution was easily countable at a lot of shots. So the sequences that were more gameplay kind of camera-esque, where you'd see like the third person Wolverine like punching a dude to death, that would be like around like 1440p ish, and then some of the cutscenes you could count like in the 1512 to 1600p range, so they were all like much more countable actually than you would expect kind of for a trailer like this. I think that maybe does point a bit to PSSR in its current iteration, because I imagine the next version of PSSR that is based upon FSR4 will have better motion handling characteristics and leave aliasing to be much harder to find. FSR4 is like when you see it in motion, it's wonderful technology, by the way. When you see it in motion, presuming the PSSR 2.0 is like that, like whenever you get like a moving edge, it is usually very well anti-aliased. You don't see like sparkle and edge staircases and stuff like that. So, but given the release time frame of this game and everything Mark Cerny told us, it, like Oliver said, I think it would be wonderful if this was one of those debut titles, and it wouldn't surprise me if it is, because Insomniac's engines tend to be at the forefront of all things technology that are capable, like that the consoles are capable of, including being like one of the first ray tracing games on console, right? So I would not be surprised about that. Like Oliver, though, it's hard to really take a good look at a lot of areas in this trailer and say like, oh, this is definitively that. One thing that I probably would guess at is that it is using something like shadow maps, because when they're in that one hallway scene, that kind of like reminiscent of the Old Boy alleyway, he's like punching up those dudes. If you look at all of the shadows from like the environmental geometry cast along the wall there, you can see that there's Peter Panning effects, like parts where the geometry meets the wall. There's a sliver of light showing through, where ray trace shadows would be watertight, for example. So I presume that points to something like shadow maps for like local light shadows, but they've done stuff in the past that has been surprising. So who knows what it is for other aspects of the rendering. But yeah, it was a visually a treat of a showing, but I just wish it was less edited so we can get a better sense of what the heck we're looking at here, because it's so edited that well, yeah, you know what it's like.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, Alex. I think going back to the original Marvel Spider-Man, they actually showed the sequence, the construction site sequence, which was a lot more gameplay than what you're seeing here. You got a real idea of the flow of the game. It just looked fantastic. And that was like years ahead of the actual release, if memory serves. But even so, just my thoughts about this. I mean, it's actually really cool to see a AAA game, like, high production value AAA game not using Unreal Engine 5. It actually bizarrely comes as a breath of fresh air, weirdly enough. But that is the extent of the proliferation of Unreal Engine at this point, where actually when you see something using a very, very different technology, it actually stands out in a fantastic way. I think the way they've actually evolved the art style to match the content matter, I think is really, really cool as well. Character rendering, top notch. I'm really excited for this. I do think, it might be too early to be talking about 30 FPS quality modes. I think there's going to be a lot of decisions made in terms of what actually constitutes a quality and a performance mode that will probably be happening in this final year of development. If you think back to the stuff that was there in Marvel Spider-Man 2, they basically had this sort of grab bag of different ray tracing effects that you could actually enable on your own to experiment with. So there's a lot of potential ray tracing technologies that they could get that could go in at some point. The next generation PSSR, I think that's kind of like surely a lock, bearing in mind it's coming out towards the latter end of 2026. As opposed to any sooner, and we know that the FSR4 based PSSR is going to be in 2026. I think that's a lock. Based on everything we've been looking at with the Int 8 version of FSR4 running on RDNA 3, which one might assume would have some commonalities with what is going to happen with PSSR. I think that's potentially pretty awesome. What can I say? I'm really excited by that. What more could we say at this point? It was just it was almost like a tease.
Yeah.
And I can understand your frustration on that, Alex. But, I think I'm just looking at the PlayStation YouTube channel, 5.5 million views in a day or so. That's just, the anticipation level for this game is off the charts. Also, kudos to Insomniac for actually doing a mature game for this. I think it's what people wanted.
Yeah.
And that trailer kind of like hammered home that they're just not holding back here. They're going all out there in terms of the violence, which I think is what people want. And, we've not actually seen any kind of animated Wolverine that is this violent. Whether it's live action or cartoons, maybe I'm wrong there. But
this violent, no, like it's very visceral. I just can't really remember that Xbox 360 game too well, unfortunately. I just remember punching a helicopter in it. That's really all I remember. If anyone remembers that.
It happens.
It was an Unreal Engine game, I think, too, so it looked it.
Was that X-Men Origins?
That might be it.
It's a pretty good game, yeah. Well, you have got the kind of equivalent of punching a helicopter in that you've got that tantalizing shot of Wolverine facing off against a Sentinel there at the end.
This is true.
which I guess that's the other thing, of course. The set pieces that Insomniac do or have shown to do with Spider-Man. Bring those skills over to Wolverine. I think it's going to be tremendous. So, yeah, hugely exciting.